What's up, Folsom fam? Brannon Short here, welcoming you to episode 2 of the Bayside Folsom Peace Podcast, where myself and Brian Hopkins sit down with 4 of our very own high school seniors in our student ministry to talk about the trap of perception. Sermon number 2 and podcast number 2 in this series is about peace faking, the motto of which is perception at all costs. And these 4 students have incredible insight on how to not let perception rule your life and how to live an authentic faith in freedom. Check this out. So as you guys know, we've been in this peace series at Bayside Folsom. And the idea is being that there's 3 sets of characters in any given story of peace. Those who break peace, those who fake or go after perception when it comes to peace, and then those who actually fight to make peace. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're so thankful that you guys would join us. Brannon, you guys know me, Brannon Short, pastor at Bayside Folsom, with
Brian Hopkins,
pastor at Bayside Folsom.
Folsom.
And then each of you guys, we were sitting around a month and a half ago talking about who we would have on this episode to talk about this topic. And Brian had the idea we should have some of our very own high school students that are in leadership at our church, or leadership at their campuses, all of that, to have this discussion. But before we get into it, introduce yourselves, starting with you, young man.
I'm Brandon Spencer, and I go to Vista Lago, right?
And what grade are you?
I'm
What
a
year?
senior.
Way
Way to go.
Amazing.
All right, I'm Anna, and I am also a senior at Vista Del Lago.
Love it.
Yeah, my name is Henrik Shea. I'm also a senior at Vista Del Lago.
That's
a pattern.
Yeah, there's a pattern.
Yeah, well, my name is Ava McElravy. I'm a senior, and I'm actually at Folsom High School. So
Yes.
Yeah.
kind of break the pattern. But
Yeah, you switched it up.
Way to go.
You're the one repping the set for the other high school. Both 10 out of 10 rated high schools. Only city in the region that has 2 rated 10 high schools. Did you guys know that?
No.
There is
No.
no other city in the region that has 2 other 10s.
Folsom is so far above average.
So shout out to Folsom,
Literally.
and shout out to you guys. Let me read the text we're going to talk about today from this passage. It says, a priest, this is obviously in the parable of the Good Samaritan. A priest happened to be going down the same road. And when he saw the man, remember the man that had been beaten, stripped of his clothes, all his possessions taken, and left half dead on the side of the road. When he saw that man, the priest passed to the other side of the road. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by and went to the other side. So set the context for a second. There's a man beaten, bleeding, that the text explicitly says is half dead on the side of the road. And there's a priest and a Levite, both who have long religious tradition and religious position. Those who are obligated not only to walk by, but to be a part of it. They know the heart of God. They've taught the Old Testament their entire lives, and they literally change sides of the road and ignore someone who's hurting. So we've already talked in episode 1 about peace breaking. And for peace breakers, the motto is me at all cost. But today we want to talk about peace faking, where the motto is perception at all costs. That with these 2 religious leaders who are wearing their robes, anybody in the community would have known they were religious elite, and now they're the ones walking on the other side of the road. And remember, these are, I need to say this because it's important, that these are 2 people that have taught Isaiah, who taught them in the Old Testament that their role was to defend the oppressed. These are guys that have taught Leviticus, where it says treat the foreigner, somebody outside of your people group, as if they were your own family. Or Exodus, when it talks about the consequences of having hard hearts. They've taught this their whole life. And here they are face to face, and in a way not to touch what's unclean, to go to somebody else who your grandma said you shouldn't associate with. They don't. They've taught all the right things. They've got all the position. They've got all the communal status. But for the sake of perception, and for the sake of the tradition, and for the sake of the rules, they ignore someone beaten, bloodied, on the side of the road, and take the other way. So let's have this conversation. That's the setup. But we'd love to talk about perception. Often we all, I'm guilty of this over and over and over again, but where we seek to perceive to protect our perception at all cost, or that it's important for us to be perceived in a certain way, even if it means we do the things or don't do the things we know we ought to do. But in your generation, you're called jokingly on the internet the iPad children. We were the iPod children, and you guys are like, what's an iPod?
You were the iPod children.
Yeah,
I
what
definitely was
I
not
was
the
trying to
iPod
throw you in
children.
on that.
No.
So what
Not a
was your
chance.
generation?
We didn't have what did we have? Tandy computers in my generation.
Anybody know what that
Tandy?
is?
You don't even know what that is.
Nope. And they don't know what LimeWire is, and illegally downloading music and burning CDs. Like, they don't get it. Like, but it's cool to have multiple generations in this, because the temptations of the heart are the same generation to generation. It just has different mask on it. So I'm so excited to have you guys in here, seniors in high school at 2 different high schools in our city, to talk about like the dangers of this and the temptations of it. So to be whoever's going to be bold, if you got a story, if you got an idea, if something just pops up, God's like stirring something in you to talk about. We have, by the way, our listeners will know this, there is no script. This is unplanned.
Totally unscripted.
This is an absolute conversation between image bearers of God, brothers and sisters in Christ. Let's talk about it. Perception. Who wants to go first?
I got you. All right. So there's this girl. I got randomly hit up by a text. Never met this girl. Never even.
The story so far is really good. So I randomly got hit up by this girl. So Shawty hollered at me. And
Yeah. So I.
yeah.
So without my knowledge, I just randomly get a text and I'm in class, right?
Yeah.
And she's just like, hey, do you want to go to homecoming? Never met this girl. Weirdest thing ever. But I'm like, no, not at all. And then she's like, okay, do you love?
He said,
I'm like, no.
Not
who
even
are you?
remotely interested.
So I'm like, and she asks me, do you know Jesus?
No way.
Like, and then she did like the classic catchphrase, Jesus turned water into wine. I could turn you into mine. Right? Right? Yeah.
That's
So,
actually good.
Bro.
Love that one.
Thank you for saying that. What an amazing
Use it
line.
later. Use it later.
Yeah.
But
I'm not ever going to be able to use it again. But yeah.
true.
Yeah. Go ahead.
all right. So then basically, I was talking to her, and I'm like, no, and she asked me if I know Jesus or if I was like anything, and I straight up lied. I straight up was like, oh yeah, I know God. I know Jesus. I have a full relationship. And I have texts with her, and she's like, oh, what church you go to? Bayside. Did not go to Bayside. Right? So I was completely lying to this girl. Didn't know her, but for some reason I felt like I was inclined to tell her a lie, right? And
To be perceived a certain way.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't know, there's something about it. I just wanted her to think of me this way and see like myself. I've never met this girl. There's no reason to lie, but I still decided to. And then find out that this girl texted me. For some reason, I've met her 6 months later. Now she's one of my best friends.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Weirdest conversation. And then we find out like in the later future, you know?
Yeah.
That is crazy.
The story in reverse order, right? Like he lies to be perceived in the good.
Exactly.
And here we are, and yeah, but it's interesting. Like, what do you think it was for that interaction with you? Like, what do you think you wanted to be perceived as?
A Christian.
Yeah,
Someone that knows God just perfect.
good person, like all of those things. Which ironically, right, nobody was beaten and bloodied on the side of the
Yeah.
road, but there's still like, I want to be perceived as good, even if this isn't true at the time. It may win me some sort of favor with this person in the immediate. Yeah.
Yep.
I love it. Thanks for telling that story about Shawty hitting you up, and here we are today. It's cool that you're friends.
Yeah.
What about the rest? Any thoughts on just perception? Doesn't have to be a story, just thoughts.
Well, I think that perception has a lot to do with reputation as well.
Yeah.
And like I know with me, like sometimes I've been in class before and we get on a topic that has to do with school and somehow it connects to the Bible or something, and I go like, oh yeah, I know this story. I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
And I often get the reaction of, oh, you're a Christian. I didn't know. Like I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I begin to realize like it's not, of course, I'm going to go around like wearing it on my sleeve, like have a shirt. Like I love a shirt that says I'm a Christian, but I don't go
That was
around.
my era. That was the millennial era, 90s Christian t-shirts.
Like I don't go around portraying that, but part of me wants to like have that reputation, like Brandon was saying, like, you know, you want to be perceived as a Christian, but also just the way that I feel like at least our communities are, it gets a lot harder to kind of just express that outwardly.
Yeah.
And also you do often get people like questioning it, and they ask you like, oh, like I thought Christians think this and that and that. And there's that false kind of perception, which kind of leads to that like false reputation for people.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking of what you said, I had kind of a little bit of a different, I guess, perspective on that.
Love it.
Is like when I'm in like, say, like English class, I tended to stray away from telling people that I knew God and that I followed the path with Jesus. And it like kind of showed up when like, if we're in like English class and we're looking at doing essays or prompts and stuff, and I could connect it to God or the Bible or something like that, and I at first wanted to, and like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then later changed my mind because I'm like, oh, I don't want people to see me this way or this way.
Yeah.
And this is like the start of like senior year, the end of junior year, and since then I've like reflected on that, and I've regretted not choosing those topics because I felt like I would have, I don't know, benefited from researching that and kind of telling other people that.
Yeah, and I think going kind of off the lines of what both Henrik and Ava were saying, I think it's really easy for us as Christians to do all of the like the quote unquote Christian things, like ask a friend like, how can I be praying for you? But then, I mean, sometimes like we end up getting busy and then like forget to pray for them, or like it's little things like that where our intentions are good, but I feel like sometimes we need to like follow through with kind of what we say. And yeah, I feel like sometimes we can kind of put on a mask of like, I am this perfect Christian doing all these perfect amazing things, and I follow God with my whole heart, and this is my amazing life. But sometimes, well, oftentimes, like people don't see behind that and see like we're all trying to navigate this faith too, and like navigate life like through the lens of God. And I feel like there's just a mask within Christianity that's put up oftentimes.
Isn't it true in the age of social media in particular, we feel very, very inclined to manage the image that we portray, which I think is what you're talking about. I'm very careful to only post things that make it look idealized,
Right,
not
yeah.
the reality of Heinrich, what you talked about, that sense of I didn't write about Jesus, even though I later wish I had, right? That sort of internal tug of war.
Yeah.
Because we want to portray always the best, only the good. Look at me, highly polished, highly managed image.
Yes. I love that. Only the best, always the good.
Yes.
Let's talk about social media for a minute. I mean, the stat I read recently was at your age, generationally, where you're at and who's on social media and how many platforms you're on. It's remarkable because my generation's the first generation to have it. Like, I remember being a sophomore when Facebook dropped. I remember being a middle schooler when MySpace dropped. I
don't even know what that is.
Don't even know what that is.
No
And that's
kidding.
crazy to me because
No kidding.
we were playing some of these guys in pickleball, and they put my name on the scoreboard as the old man's team. I'm 30 years old, and it's crazy. It's like, MySpace, what is that? You old geriatric man on the pickleball court. But let's talk about that for a minute. Like, to Brian's point, he opened up the conversation beautifully there. How do you guys, I almost said perceive, but how do you walk with social media as ingrained as it is in your society and your generation, especially on the topic that's like wanting to be perceived a certain way? Perception in social media.
Yeah, I can kind of go off of that. So I've struggled a lot with trying to juggle that, like being a good Christian and social media, just because social media has always like influenced me to like make the wrong decisions and turn back to like sin and stuff. And I've struggled like juggling it just because social media, like you said, is so ingrained that if you're not on social media, you're not like posting and being like, oh, I was here. People like, they don't know that. And it feels like if you don't post that, you weren't there.
Right.
So
Left out.
exactly, yeah. So I struggle to find like a balancing point for that. And recently I found that I can't find a balancing point for that, and I've started to kind of get away more from social media and focus on God until I can find that balancing point.
I also think, just while you're all thinking, like, I also think, as somebody that feels also like you have to use it, especially on the music end of things, like that's how you get music into the world. But I feel this need to have to, should, push, market, post, brand. I was just speaking at another church out in Modesto a couple months ago, and they're doing the introduction of me while showing some pictures of me. And I just remember walking out on stage, telling some of my story and being like, I gotta be real with y'all, this just feels fake. I'm like, every picture y'all just saw of me is filtered. Everything's perfect, and it's a highlight reel of my accomplishments.
Exactly.
Position, title, list, education, and I'm like, oh, it feels like the applause could be addicting if you're not like sensitive to that like inner small voice of, this ain't all real. This definitely is one side of the equation, definitely not the whole picture. But for the rest of you, social media and perception.
I've cut off social media completely, right?
How long ago?
I want to say like
Yesterday.
Yeah. Sometimes I go back to it, but so like I've cut it off about like 5 months ago, probably.
Wow.
Good for you.
Yeah, and then it's wild just being like, because you're controlled by it so much. I mean, I've reinstalled. It's weird. I'm young, but I reinstalled Facebook about 20 times now in the past month, I think. But
That was a jab, by the way.
A total jab.
That was a jab.
but yeah,
You old people who use Facebook.
yeah, no.
For your
so-
biking groups and your flower clubs.
Yeah, I have to use it for a group. That's why but. So I've installed it, and just for that, but I find myself just scrolling. It's addictive. There's like dopamine rushes.
Literally.
Over. That's all.
Chemically
it is.
addictive. Yes.
Biologically, you're just scrolling, and you just catch yourself doing that, but you don't stop.
Yeah.
And then you just have to cut it off sometimes, and it's rough.
Yeah. What else?
Yeah, I also after Mexico, I realized like how much I was able to focus on God more, like not being on social media and being on my phones, and
An entire week without your phone.
yeah, it's
and did
really
it feel like detox
yeah.
in the
Oh
beginning? You're like,
By the end, though, did it feel like freedom?
yeah. Oh yeah, it was so nice,
Yeah.
and I honestly didn't want my phone back, and
We
but
hear that every year. Anna, do not lose that thought. We hear that every year. We take every phone away from hundreds of teenagers, and they're like,
difficult for a day or two.
yeah. And then kind of like
6 days later,
keep it.
yeah, I'll go back to a flip phone.
Right.
Give me a flip phone.
Get a Motorola Razr right now. All right, Anna, keep going. Sorry.
yeah, so I took a little break from social media for a couple of months, and then recently, probably like 2 months ago, I reinstalled Instagram, and I heard I can't remember where I heard it, but it was a quote. It was like, if we're supposed to be set apart from other people on this world, like that also must mean like our posts on social media should be different.
Yeah.
So I kind of saw it as a way of like, I can help spread the word of God through my posts.
Yes.
Like, it's not, I mean, yes, there are some bad parts of it, but it's not necessarily all terrible. And like, just kind of changing the perspective of like, because like as Christians we have such different views on life and like how we live out our life. So I feel like in that, showing it through social media, like just a little bit of like a change of perspective that has like a hope to it. I think that might make people who see whatever like posts think what's different about them, or where did they get this, and that can start like a faith conversation.
Agree.
Yeah.
I love that.
How's that gone? Like, what's the feedback been?
It's been good. I feel like I feel like I've been able to see like more inspirational things with like having social media again. It feels like I'm like, I don't know the words for it, but like my feed is mostly like pastors and like
the algorithm.
The algorithm is
the algorithm.
onto you.
Yeah, it's like
it's literally
it's like
onto you.
inspirational things, and so I feel like in that way it's like I'm able to apply it to my life
Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
and then kind of learn how I can like relate to others through that.
Right.
Yeah, my experience with social media, I feel like for me, I've always been such a big encourager of social media because I feel like there is so much good that can come from it, like from communication, you know, and
tool.
all those awesome like algorithm posts
Yeah.
pushing that agenda when it's, you know, like you're liking all the Christian posts and you just get more on your feed. It's like a great thing to open up to. But I also feel like it can go into that reinforcement loop of being perceived a certain way and that reputation, because you'll get things on your feed and you'll get the comments about things like some girl woke up this morning and she read her Bible for like 3 whole hours. And there is this bit of,
Yes.
I mean, like, of course, like, I'm like, you know, great for her, you know,
Yeah.
wish I could do that. But then I'm like, oh man, like, I didn't read my Bible this morning. And it
Yeah.
begins to
Can
feel a
still be
little
comparison.
more, it's that comparison that, I
Yeah.
mean, regardless if we don't want to do that, it can become a bit of a comparison. And then becoming a Christian with that title that it comes with on social media feels like you are trying to check some boxes off sometime. Like,
Precisely.
try to be like the people on there who are like, oh, I read my Bible this morning. I had my quiet time with God. I said nothing mean to anybody today. Like all those things. And it does create, I feel like sometimes a little bit of an unrealistic expectation. But furthermore on that, like it can be a great thing, but it's only a great thing if we're making sure like to pair it with the truth that we know about ourselves, that God says about us.
Yep.
Because I feel like sometimes I know I've been a victim to getting lost in that and feeling like inadequate as a Christian. But then try and remind myself like these are what they're choosing to show, the good. They want to show the good and they want to show, you know, all the things that they're doing right. But you seldom get to see, like what they're struggling with too. And it's one of those things where it's like a reminder that social media, it's a great platform for sharing, but it also doesn't reflect how like we are all human and all those.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's a tool. There's
Great
both sides of
insight.
that. You're not on it.
No, I quit. I quit, 3-4 years ago now. I put it down. People send me links to stuff all the time, and I'm like, sorry. Like, I think I have profiles on all the
You
stuff.
do. I tag him all the
yeah,
time.
I get tagged, but
He's
I
never
can't see
reposted
it.
it.
I can't. So people record an Instagram reel and send it to me. So that's how I want. Good heavens, am I old? Wow, that's
Brandon,
so
look at this man. You said, "Am I old?" He goes,
Yes, very.
"No doubt." But I love what you
very
guys
old.
said in that. Okay, it is, and you, Ava, you use the words reinforcement loop, which makes you my favorite high school student of all time. I love that. Let's just go read an academic article together because I nerd on that stuff too. Like I'm like, yes, reinforcement loops, dopamine hits, hours. The fact that like some people have studied the chemical reaction you get from your wrist motion being this.
Yeah.
Like I find myself when I don't have my phone doing it, like looking for it and wanting to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a reaction.
Yeah.
But again, to Anna's point, like, and yet there's good in the tool. Like there's not a one size fit all. But to your point in this, like it's still playing into this conversation of perception. And I think that's to each person to kind of hold their boundaries on it. I mentioned this to you guys right before we started. Well, I had a pastor tell me as a senior in college, so just one stage ahead of where you're at right now. He said, I think your generation has the most spiritual potential of any generation since the disciples. And I was like, wow, where are they going to go do it? Like, that's my first. He's like, but here's my biggest fear for you. My biggest fear is that you're in love with the idea of these things more than you are doing them. That he goes, I think you as millennials are maybe more in love with the idea of compassion than being compassionate. I think you're more in love with the idea of acceptance than being accepting, or peace, or this, like a little bit of like you'd like to be seen as virtuous.
Yeah.
Then go about making peace and doing these things that are actually really hard in our world. I affirm his fear. I actually think my generation in a lot of ways is proving that they're more in love with ideas than action, ideas than truth. But when you guys hear a phrase like that, living in all of it, like it's very important in our world right now, especially in your online footprint, to be perceived as good. Like Twitter will kick you off Twitter. Instagram will block you. You'll get shadow banned on TikTok. It is important even on the algorithms to be perceived good.
Yeah.
When you guys hear that, do you feel some resonant with that in your own generation of more in love with ideas than doing? Do you feel like your generation actually is like, nah, if that man's on the side of the road, we are not going to fake it. We are going to go. How's that just land with you? Because I remember being, again, in college and that landing really heavy.
Yeah. Great question.
Yeah, so I definitely see it a little bit in just kind of going about school and stuff. You'll see like people walking down the halls, they'll have like their cross on, or they'll have some like Jesus merch or something like that. And then when you like talk to them and you have like interactions with them, you don't see it reflected. And I saw that a lot, especially like going from middle school into high school and like coming back from quarantine and stuff because we didn't have a freshman year. So coming back,
hit all of these
yeah.
freshmen. So you went back to school what year?
Sophomore?
Sophomore and a half?
Yeah.
It was end of sophomore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did like sophomore year, but coming back, I saw a lot of people wearing like crosses and stuff. I'm like, oh, cool. That's really cool. And then like seeing how they acted with people and how they went about their life just at school, I didn't see it reflected, and I felt like, yeah, I've lost my pace now. I don't know where I was going with that.
Anna, what were you about to say? I know that you were about to jump in there.
Yeah.
Too.
It's kind of like a whole different
Do it.
path.
Take
Yeah. So
Run it.
I know our generation, like kind of what you're saying, like we have big ideas on how we want to like spread the gospel, but I know that it's really hard, at least for me, to find the courage to do that without the support behind it.
Yeah.
Like Brandon and I, we started up FCA at Vista.
That's amazing.
And yeah, it's been incredible how God's been working. It's been really cool. Like there's a man named John Fedota who helps like run it in Northern California, and he's really supported us in that. And I feel like just knowing that there's somebody who like he's not on our campus, but he's cheering us on and he's got our back. And I feel like that's just so comforting to know that like other people are with you in it. And yeah, I think the support just helps put those ideas into action.
That's a beautiful way to say that. Because one of the questions, probably the question we'll end with, like not right at this moment, I'm saying one of what we'll end with at the end of this, is this question of what are some of the things that could help us not be enslaved to perception, where we could authentically walk faith out. That's a beautiful first start to that answer. Support.
Yeah.
It feels more possible to be recklessly abandoned and authentically living for faith, not just perception of faith, when you got people in the back cheering you on. Somebody that's been ahead but is going to stand around on all sides and cheer you as you go. Like that's a really cool answer. You can't use it again now when I asked that question, but it was a really cool answer. I love that.
So here's my point on it. Basically,
a girl texted you.
Yeah. A different girl this time.
Different one. No, but like our group, we can't wait for other generations to help us. Yesterday we were at 6 p.m. service, Basics.
Shout out Basics.
We were talking to one of the pastor, I think his name is Wesley, and he was telling us, don't wait. We can't wait for support. We have to go, move, and then you guys will come in. We have support. Bayside has supported us, so we just got to move and just use the time we have and just push that movement, because there is a revival and it's going to happen, because COVID, that brought us everybody to an all-time low, and the only way up is up. So I think that it's going to be a huge revival, and it takes each and every single one of us to just start moving,
right?
And then we'll get support as we go.
Agreed.
So what does start moving look like?
God gives you an idea, you jump on it.
Yeah.
You do it, and then God will provide as you go, right? So we have Instagram. One of my friends just made Instagram. Caleb, he just started it up, and we're doing serving on Saturdays now. And we're just gonna go out, start helping people, and just getting the message out there. Yeah. And then, so anything, just as long as God's with you, you're gonna win. So,
love that.
Yeah, a heart of immediate obedience. Yes. In its appropriate ways. Back to that question though, on the idea of your generation, whether it resonates with you, if it's more in love with ideas or not. Any thoughts, Ava?
Yeah, a few thoughts.
Send it.
Well, first of all, on that whole idea of like reacting immediately on it, of course, that's like the ideal. That's like what we want to happen. That's like in all of our heads, we think, if God is going to give me an idea, I want to believe that I can go and do it. I want to go execute it.
Yeah.
But I feel like there is this hesitation with a lot of people where it does come down to perception, because you are scared to go do something because you're afraid of how the world is going to perceive you. Which is so hard, I feel like, in times of that, when the fear of judgment or the fear of society kind of tends to take over the reminder of that, like, we're only really doing this for God. We're doing this like for his kingdom and to bring people closer to him, can really get lost in like the issues of your reputation and the perception of how people perceive you, as well as just like, I feel like in my community personally, especially at my school, I've seen a lot of, just in general, I don't know, if it's necessarily Christianity, but just in terms of inclusivity, there's a lot of people who would say they're inclusive, and there's a lot of people that that want to think they're inclusive, and they convince themselves so much that they're inclusive, but then they're really not. For example, I work a lot with our special needs at Folsom High School, and I absolutely love them. I've been doing it since I was in middle school, and even within my own friend group, sometimes there are a couple things that happen where they'll say they're inclusive. I believe they truly have that intent, but it gets lost when there's some girl who says something about some kid, and they want to be liked, or they want to be perceived as part of the in crowd, part of that conversation. So then they also go and they say something that normally they probably wouldn't say, because of like how you want to be perceived. Yeah.
That's a great example.
It's a great example. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head of exactly where the rubber meets the road on this whole, what is the image that I'm managing to the world? And you live in the most pressurized environment of high school, right? Where every single day you wake up wondering, is this true? Do you wake up every single day and go, like, how are people going to perceive me and think about me today? Is that a compelling thought that you have every single day?
Was for
Can
me.
I just ask that? Because it was for me.
A little bit, just kind of like when I'm trying to put like an outfit together, I'm like, oh, is this gonna look good? Are people gonna think I look good?
Is this fit?
Yeah, and
Right.
and if I end up like not liking it, I'm like, oh, people are gonna see this, and this is gonna be me, and people are gonna be like, oh, he
Great example.
doesn't have good style.
It's a great example.
Yeah, it is. And you're living like, I so appreciate you. Like, Brian and I talk about this a lot. So for your generation, like, I'm also so grateful for what you already are in our church. Like, our perception is you're not the church of the future. You are the church now. And you're already doing it, and you're leading in all these different areas, and like in ways that like I'm blown away. Like, you go start clubs and work with special needs students, some of the most precious people on earth. Like, you're already, like, this is not one day. Like, this is a now. And you're living in the most pressurized, how'd you say it? Pressurized cooker or something?
Yeah, pressurized environment.
Oh, if you
of
didn't
it.
say cooker, that
I
was
don't think I
just
did.
me.
Yeah, it's good though.
In history,
Literally.
like, I was reading a sociologist the other day that said part of the reason on some of the like the mental health crisis stuff we talked about in Sound Mind, that no one person could actually hold the weight of the news globally at the same moment, and no generation in history ever has. You have the local news, you've got your local happenings, and then maybe if it's big enough, you'll hear about stuff that's going on around the globe. Now you have a little computer that lives in your pocket and just goes zzz, zzz. Floods in Afghanistan, earthquakes in Japan, shooting in Chicago, and it doesn't stop. And like, you have
almost in real time.
Yes,
in real
literally.
time.
So you're holding all of that in this crazy culture that is holding on to perception at all costs. I think my encouragement to you guys and to myself would be in some of those regards that often, like, we're looking at the story of the Bible, the moments we have to step out in faith are they're not good for perception.
Yeah.
They're not good for reputation. Like, the examples that come to my head immediately are like Peter, after he denies Jesus 3 times, and then Jesus goes about with intentionality bringing him back into the fold, and they're on the beach that day, and he says, after he's denied Jesus and Jesus has died, they look out and say, it's the Lord. and Peter throws himself off the boat into the sea and swims as hard as he can to get to Jesus. This is not one of these moments, like, we may romanticize that, but that's not some like dignified moment.
No.
It's not like they brought the boat in and then they walked off like dignitaries onto the shore where Christ was there awaiting them. There's a there's a flinging in that. But I think about David dancing in the presence of the Lord and his wife getting mad and said, "You ended up naked." Or at least derobed.
I was wondering if you were going to go there.
I was going there, baby.
Going there.
Oh, they're all old enough. Come on. This podcast is at least TV 17 now. But no, so he ends up derobed, and she goes, "Oh, look at the king, how dignified he is."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, I would become way more undignified than this."
Yeah.
Like, this is
For the sake of
worshiping the
God.
king. Yeah, like, or you look at the widow and the mites, and you talk about Mary and the prayer and the song. Like, we would go over and over and see that in these moments of genuine, relationally driven obedience, it doesn't always look like, to the world, positive perception of like clean, perfect, washed Christian living.
No.
Prodigal son, the father starts running, which is like against the cultural code.
The least dignified thing you could ever
The
do.
least dignified thing you could ever do. So some of that,
Zero, absolutely zero image management.
none.
Every single one of those occasions.
Everyone. So I think that would be my encouragement to you guys. Like, in a generation that is so perception driven, perception at all cost. Some of the greatest moments that you have in your life with God will look like zero image management, reckless abandon, may even look undignified to the world. They won't have all the perception to it. All right, speaking of that, as we kind of round this conversation, I've got two last thoughts, and one of them is Brian's, one of them is mine, because he mentioned it earlier. But like the thought of what's a common, like if we could dare enough to go here, like what's an example of something like this story where somebody turns a blind eye to the happenings and brokenness or people or hurting, pain? Do you ever see that happen? Like, again, not in your life. It doesn't have to be in your real life. It could be church. It could be anything. I'm not going to like put parameters on where you go with this, but where the thing to do is to step into the mess and be real and help, and yet the temptation for the perception is to blind eye ignore what's happening. And again, if we don't have one, we can cut it.
We talk about this one all the time. I'll go first
Yes.
on this one because it's sort of in our face all the time. The people standing alongside the road
Yeah.
with a sign at the stops. Do you guys see these? Right? And I always have this internal struggle dialogue. First of all, I very seldom have cash in my wallet.
Right.
So often that's a cop-out. But when I do, I go, gosh dang it. So is this even real?
Yes.
Right? Is this accurate? Are they telling me the truth about whatever scenario they've portrayed on the cardboard box that they've written in felt tip marker? And probably 10 times out of 10, I go, I'm not doing it. I'm not rolling down my window. I'm not giving money out the window to some. And I drive away later and I go, Brian, not my job to figure out the scenario.
Yeah.
Just my job to step in and help. Step in and help by handing money out the window, right? Like, how much really stepping into that is there? It's not. But I don't very often. And then I get down later because I go, geez, not my role to judge, not my place. Why don't I just step in and help?
That's a
You
great.
guys do that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. I did that for a good while, like just seeing people on the side of the road that needed help, and I would just kind of try and ignore them and like look at my phone or do something like that, which I tend to do, and I'm trying not to do that now. But it's actually kind of funny that you mentioned like giving money to them. I just had an experience a little bit ago that there were these people outside of Rayleigh's, and they were asking for a little bit of money for the I forget exactly what cause it is. It was like abuse for women, like drug abuse stuff.
Yeah.
And they were asking for money, and they were like trying to talk to me, and I was about to walk away, and then I thought to myself, like old like wristbands, like what would Jesus do? And I'm like, well, it's not really up for me to decide like what God is going to do with this. I'm just going to listen to them out. And at the time I only had like $1 in my wallet. I still gave it to them, and I was like, hey, I don't have that much on me. I support your cause. And I was walking away, and this guy and his he had his son with him, and this guy came up to me. He's like, hey, can I talk to you real quick? And he's like, I think they're trying to scam you. I lived in Stockton, and we saw this all the time, and he was trying to like warn me against doing that. And I just found it really interesting. The whole rest of the day I had like this like internal struggle about like trying to like was giving money to them right, even if it was a scam. And I just had a battle all day long in my head, just trying to like justify what I was doing, justify what he was doing, justify what they were doing, because I wanted to believe them, because it sounded like a good cause.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think kind of bringing the conversation like almost like into the classroom, it's oftentimes I see students getting really consumed in and like I found myself getting consumed into like all the schoolwork and like the stress of like planning a future and where am I going to go for college and applications and deadlines are coming up and so got into here and so got into here, and it's really stressful. And I think that like a just like an application is bringing the hope of the Lord into those situations where we can find peace in just knowing that God's got the plan all figured out. Like it's not by the amount of work we do or the amount of like the amount of things that happen to somebody else and like all that that'll get us to where we're supposed to be. And I think that yes, we do have to like try our best in school and all that kind of stuff, but ultimately like we can rest assured that the plan is up to the Lord. And I think that's something that we can bring to our classmates at school and and just like other aspects of life too.
Well said.
Yeah, and I think just piggybacking off of that, because I feel like that's such a prevalent thing, especially at our age and the kind of communities that we interact with. There is, I think at every age too, there's always stress over the future, whether it's, like next week or it's like 5 years from now. And I see that a lot in the class too, a bunch of people, and there is this kind of communal just like panic over over the future.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, like everyone just is sharing this same thought of like, am I going to get into here? Am I going to make enough money? Am I going to get a good job and all those things? And I always just like to think about this thing that my dad says actually. He always says like when we're uncertain about things, like when we have questions about like, things that are said in the Bible, when we have questions about things that aren't making sense, that we should always just try to focus on what we do know. Like what we do know is like God is good, God has a plan for us, and he has like our best interests at heart. Like we matter to him, and so we have to just put our faith in that as much as we can and just acknowledge like everybody matters to God. Like God has a plan for everybody kind of thing.
100%. I think
it just has a way of, sorry to
no,
interrupt.
gosh,
that just has a way of depressurizing, because we live in the highest achieving suburbs anywhere, right?
2 tens.
So right, that's exactly right. So that treadmill that everyone's running on, trying to keep up. Are they getting ahead of me? Am I getting left behind? Just having that perspective to go, I can step off of, like, seriously, how old are you?
17.
17 years old. And the decisions that you think you're going to make at 17 and how you think that's going to affect the entire trajectory. Like, what if you make that decision 3 days later? Like, what really does that alter?
Right.
Not much, right? So relieving some of that with that, okay, what is true? What do I know? And just root in there.
What a beautiful line there. Like, to intentionally step off the hamster wheel of this game now.
That's right.
Like, on the perception side.
Yes.
Yes, do your best. Yes, give it all you got. You got one life to live. Like, sprint. Paul said, run the race as if you're trying to win it. Like, again, not in a way that's you're just giving all your effort. Like you're giving those things, and yet if you are able, because what you're experiencing now, Brian just was saying that, like, it's a microcosm of the city you live in it.
Yeah.
Like, one day when you guys are graduated, working your jobs, maybe married with a kid, and then in our city, right? Like, there's others. They're gonna have boats. There'll be bigger houses. There will be more success. There will be finer clothes. Like, the perception game is forever. Like, the keeping up with the Joneses. How am I being perceived? How am I being viewed? Again, it's human. There's a sin nature in all of that. Like, again, those things aren't wrong. It's just if it's for the perception, if it's ill motived. So if you're able to say, even in these moments now that feel like, and are like in some regards really big, if you're able to say, now I'm gonna step off this hamster wheel, I'm gonna do my best, but I'm not gonna do this like perception game. I'm not gonna play this game to try to be perceived a certain way. Oh my gosh, 30-year-old you will be really proud of 17-year-old you. 60-year-old you will be really proud of 30-year-old you. Like, that continues to just reap benefit as time goes.
How's that line go? Buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't even like.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. The game.
Just cut it off now.
Jump off the train now and live your life in freedom. So, like, that's the final question. The way we often end a podcast is we ask a question, everybody gives a quick answer to it, and that's our end. So when it comes to peacemaking and not being caught in the perception at all cost, kind of fake, kind of like got my robes on trap, what is a way that, like, either you feel encouraged or things that you help aid you to walk in real faith? Now, I'll give you a second to think on this by encouraging you also. You have to look in the mirror first. We all have to look internally first. But I think this is true. When it comes to your relationships with somebody, you usually don't know someone as a peace faker until you need them not to be one. And then in the moment you need them not to be one, the motive of perception will expose them. Or it will expose us. So if the perception's the goal, that game will catch you anyways.
Yeah.
It'll break your relationships anyways. Like, there will be pain in that story anyways. So as you go about trying to hop off that hamster wheel, my greatest encouragement is God loves you. Be you. Walk faithfully. But he literally said it was for freedom you've been set free.
Yep.
Like, the way that you have been called to live in the world is as yourselves freely living for the right things. But what are the tools? Like, final question, swing around the circle. What helps you live in a way that's not driven by perception, but is really true and authentic to your faith? Send it.
Community, 100%. People I have around me,
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Love it.
I think for me, making sure that I am spending time on my own with the word and not relying on others to be that for me.
Yeah.
Kind of just going off of what Brandon said, community. Just community, especially like Brannon and Anna. They've really helped me look forward and see like the joy through God and make me look forward to wanting to do that.
That's amazing.
That's tender.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. Ava?
I think it's within your community being authentic, and with, like, when it comes to God, like, being just authentic, because authenticity earns authenticity.
Agreed. You're going to reap what you sow on that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think what comes to mind is living out of who you really are,
Yes.
right? Sons and daughters of the Most High God, right? Which is the highest achievement anybody could ever aspire to.
Yeah, can't beat that.
Son or daughter of the Most High God. And just rooted there. And if you live there, then the perceptions of other people don't really matter, right? If you can just lean into that, kind of like, your opinion about what I do, who I hang out with,
Yeah.
what I give my life and time to, what I care deeply about, kind of rolls off.
100%. I feel my answer's the same. I think if you were rooted in your identity, that is the way to birth reckless abandon.
I didn't mean to steal your answer. I'm sorry.
No, it was just so good. I'll end it with this. One of my favorite rappers says it like this. He goes, I'm liberal and conservative. I'm charismatic and reformed too. And my wife's happy and Jesus loved me. There's nothing in the world to conform to. And I think that's it. Like, wherever you're at in the nuance of the beauty of who you are, like all of those things, you don't have to earn God's love. The people that really care about you are going to be there.
Yeah.
Fakers will prove themselves out. So live your life trying not being one. Authentically living out into it. And for what it's worth, I get to watch you four in the capacity that we get the opportunity to. Beyond proud of you. And remember us little guys when you take over the planet. Cool?
Please.
Love you guys. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.